Hey guys, welcome back. In this lecture, we're gonna be talking about observer design pattern as the reactive APIs follows this pattern. So let's start. By the name observer, what is the first thing comes up in your mind? Observer is someone who watches or notices something. Similarly, in this design pattern, we have a subject, which is responsible to maintain a list of all its dependent objects known as observers. So observer design pattern defines one too many dependencies between objects. When one object changes its state, all of its dependent objects get notified or updated automatically. Like here we have a subject which has a state, and whenever any modification happen in the state, subject will notify all its observers which are registered in the subject. And once observers gets notified by subject, now observers are ready to get the same update implemented in them. Now let's have a look towards a real-time example to explore it more. Let's say we have a book application named Library where user can register and log in. He can read, download and purchase books via this application online. So this is the use of this application. And on the other side, you can see Bob, Rob, and Rooney. They all want to buy a book from this application. So they logged in to the application and searched for that book. But unfortunately, that book is not available or in sold out state. So they all take the notify check, means please notify when book becomes available. So after 4-5 working days, books are again back in stock. So the state of book changes from sold out to available state. Then the application notifies all of its registered user for that book. Now they will be able to purchase the book. So this is one of the example for the observer pattern. Let's have a look how interfaces and classes are arranged in this pattern. So this is the UML class diagram for observer design pattern. In this, we are having two most important things. One is the subject and another is observer. Subject is an interface containing three methods: register observer, remove observer, and the third one is notify observer. Other objects use this interface to register themselves as observer and can also remove themselves from being noticed or observed. Each subject can have one or more observers. So this is observer design pattern. In reactive API, or let's say in RxJava, the subject is called observable and observer is an observer. So see here, concrete subject implements notify observer method, which is used to update current observer when its state changes. An observer interface is an updating interface for objects that should be notified of any change in subject, or in case of RxJava, in observable. So all observers need to implement observer interface. This interface has a method update, which gets called when subject's state changes. And in RxJava, the observable emits events or data whenever observable is ready to emit the data or emits the data, the observer gets the data. So this is how RxJava is using this pattern. See here, concrete observers maintains a reference to a concrete subject object and implements the observer interface. Each observer registers with a concrete subject to receive the updates. So this is how they are arranged. Now let's discuss the sequence diagram, how they interact at runtime. So here we are having observer 1, observer 2 objects and a subject. So first observer 1 and observer 2 objects call register observer on subject to register themselves so that they gets notified whenever there is any change in subject. So now subject will be able to send notification to the registered observer when any state change happen. So if any external object changes the state of subject by calling the setState method and the state of subject changes, subject calls notify on itself, then notify calls update on registered observer 1 and observer 2 objects. Which request the changed data by using getState from subject to update their state. Now let's see the same with a code example. So let's move to the IDE. So see here, this is the observer design pattern class, which we are going to use as the driver class. Other than this class, we are having 4 classes. First is the subject library. This is the subject or the observable in case of RxJava. It's having 3 methods: subscribe observer, unsubscribe observer, and notify observer. First method, to subscribe to this subject library by the observer. Second method, to unsubscribe the observer to this library. And third one is notify observer, to notify about any change happening to the observer. Then we have the concrete implementation of the subject library. Here we are having 6 fields. First is name, type, then author, price, and in stock. These 5 fields are the details about the book, and then we are having obs list, which is a list of all the subscribed observers which are subscribed to this library. Then we are having a constructor, and then getters and setters, and then the implementation of all those 3 methods present in the subject library class. First, subscribes the observer, so it adds that observer to the list, to the subscription list. And then we are having unsubscribe observer method, which removes the observer from the list, thus unsubscribing the observer. And then we have notify observer method. Here we are printing the name, type, all the details, and then we are updating about any change happening to the observer. So we are calling the update method on the observer object. Now it's time to look at the observer. So this is the observer interface, which is having single method update. Whenever any change happen in the subject or book, it calls the update on this observer. Let's see its concrete implementation. This is the end user class, which is the concrete implementation of this observer. It's having single field name, which is the name of the observer. We can create any number of observers that can subscribe to this book or the subject library. Then we are having the constructor for this class, which defines the name and then subscribe this end user to the book or the subject library. Then we are having getter and setter for the name, and then the implementation of update method. When the update method on this observer gets called, it will print hello, the name of the observer. We are glad to notify you that your book is now available. So hope you got the idea how observer and observable or the subject are interlinked. Now it's time to come to this observer design pattern class, and let's have it all together here. So first we will create an object of the subject, which is the book class, the concrete book class. So let's create a book object, book, new book, and let's pass the required details here. Let's say the name of the book is Goosebumps. Genre is horror. And let's say XYZ. Price 200 and its status or state is sold out. So we have created the subject. Now we need some observers that will subscribe for this book to the subject library or to this book. So let's create some of the observers. We have the concrete class end user for that. So end user, user1, this is new end user, and the name of the user is Bob, and subject here we have is book. And let's create one more user, user2, this is Rob. So we have created the observers and the observable, or you can say the subject. So internally, this will add these users to the subscription list of this book. Because if you see this observer or this end user here, we are subscribing the observer to the subject. Now initially the status is sold out. So if I print sys out book.getInStock and run this, you'll see that it is in sold out state. And now let's change the status of this book from sold out to in stock. So book.setInStock, and let's say in stock. And now let's run this program and see what we get. So we get availability changed from sold out to back in stock. Book name Goosebumps, book details, author XYZ is now in stock, so please notify all users. Then it internally called the note update method on the observers. So it printed, hello Bob, we are glad to notify you that your book is now in stock. And similarly for Rob. So this is how observer design pattern works. And this is the main concept behind the design of RxJava. Hope this design pattern or this explanation would help you to understand RxJava design in no time or in very less time. So this was all about this lecture. See you in the next one.